Three, two, one. We are live with Made in the 80s, episode 11. Here with your host. I'm the graded 80s kid, J-Boy. Here with my sidekick, the Nardini. Thomas Nardini, Seal VHS. What's up, brother?
Hello. I see you just took a sip from my, probably my favorite, well, definitely my favorite glasses that you have.
Yeah, look at that.
I love those things. When I saw those at your house, I was just like, oh my God. To those listening, it is, you want to describe it?
These are vintage Wilson tennis ball cans that are actually glasses. They're mini, so, you know, they're like mini versions. They would fit maybe a double-sized ping pong ball. But, yeah, those rad. Don't those bring you back to the early 80s? These are like the cans my dad would bring home to play with.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And these are like the 70s, 80s tennis ball can glasses. I saw these at a garage sale. I was like, dude, I have to have these.
Oh, you found those in the wild.
Have to have them. Yeah, in the wild. That's our segment. Okay, done with that. We're moving on.
Knock that out. All right. You're making good time.
Knock that out. Oh, well, we'll be all right. We guys have a good day.
Well, have a good
on
weekend.
Episode 12.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, it's 80-some degrees here in mid-April in Cleveland, which is unheard of.
About 60 here and gloomy in LA.
It's been yeah, they had that torrential rain in Miami. And, yeah, you know, I was thinking Tampa Bay, because obviously I've been going to all the Indians games since I'm here for a little while, a little respite from Atlanta. The Rays are on that tremendous run. What are they, 12-0 or something?
They're about to. Last time I checked, they were beating Boston pretty good today, so they should
so
tie the record.
13-0, tie the record, tied with your Milwaukee Brewers.
And what year?
Like 86, 87.
There you go. 87.
Yeah, 87 Brewers. Obviously, they didn't make the World Series.
No, they actually lost 12 in a row about a month later after that.
Yeah.
Classic Milwaukee.
I'm thinking, I don't know if it bodes well for them because the other team was like a 70s Cardinals team that I don't think made the World Series either. 74 Cardinals or something.
There was another early 80s one. I think was
it the Cardinals then?
Yeah, but the Cardinals did make the World Series in 82 because they knocked the Brewers out. Or they beat the Brewers in the World Series in 82.
I'm trying to think. 87... Mets won it in 86. 87 might have been the Twins.
That was early 90s.
No.
Or I'm thinking Blue Jays, sorry.
Yeah, you're thinking Blue Jays. Early 90s is the Blue Jays. 87, I think, was the Twins. Are you looking it up?
I am. Twins over the Cardinals.
Woo, look at that. You know, baby. Don't mess with my anything in the 80s and 90s sports history-wise. It's like a vault, right? We had one night at my buddy's house drinking game was see if you could stump me. And I could get NBA champions, World Series champions, Super Bowl champions, hockey, not so much at that time. I had a couple ideas of a few teams that won. But then, man, I might have named 2/3 of the Grand Slam champions for tennis at that time, too. Those I know, too, almost all of them. 88 Dodgers, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
88 Dodgers, 89. That's where there's a little confusion. The 89-90, because that was I think the 89 was the earthquake game.
Okay, Candlestick.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Earthquake Giants and A's or whatever.
Didn't the A's win one around then? 89, 90?
89, yeah.
And the Reds?
Yep. 90, 91, 91, 92, I think, was the back-to-back Blue Jays.
Okay.
When Joe Carter, figure that.
And Molitor.
Indian stud. Yeah.
Brewer stud.
Yeah.
See, our cities are intertwined.
Well, you know, all the beer drinking polka players from Cleveland moved to Milwaukee and thought they were upgrading in life.
Oh, they were sorely mistaken.
Yeah. Frankie Yankovic went there and he was like, "Oh, forget it. I'm going to California." What happened here with the Milwaukee polka? So,
boy, there's a topic I didn't think we'd ever get on.
onto polkas.
Yeah, Kenosha Kickers, polka, polka, polka.
Dude, I think it's a perfect lead-in because is there any more blended 80s tune than Jack Black's version of Peaches, Peaches, Peaches? It sounds like an old polka tune. You know, it's like an old polka tune meets Meatloaf. You know,
Definitely.
What was the first thing you thought of when you saw him doing that on the piano?
Honestly, I was kind of like, all right, this is funny, but this doesn't fit Mario to me at all.
I'm glad they had some fun with it. You know what I mean? Like, we'll dive into it here. Obviously, this show is going to be dedicated to a bunch of the 80s movies, 80s themed movies. They're not 80s movies, but 80s themed movies. And, you know, that Peaches thing, at first I was like, ah. And then when it was like tough, it's like me. I had to go. Obviously, it made more sense as Meatloaf for Bowser than like Elton John or something. You know, like.
Well, what's funny is in the Tenacious D movie, Meatloaf plays his father. If you're familiar,
right.
And that was the first time Meatloaf. Yes, people wanted him to sing for like 20, 25 years at that point. He just wouldn't do it. Wanted to be an actor. So the one thing that brings the legend back to singing is the Tenacious D movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he crushed it, just crushed it. But yeah, I think the Peaches thing is really funny. And you get a Jack Black song out of it, which is always a treat. But it's just like, it just felt off to me as far as the Mario format goes.
Yep. Yeah, a little bit. I mean, quick respite here since we got a comment question already. Hey, I'm excited about the signature auctions at Heritage. Like, let's jump there and we'll jump right back to Mario because that kind of transitioned in there quickly. But certainly, I don't know if you're keeping an eye on the Heritage stuff. I think that this Heritage auction, premier auction for video games, is going to do significantly better, obviously, than what happened in end of the year. I feel like the bottom for a lot of collectibles was November. That October auction into November, and then January a little uptick. I mean, obviously, Bitcoin has doubled since then, almost. That makes a big difference with the collectibles market. But like there's a lot of cool stuff on there. There's some really rare stuff. Obviously, that early print Duck Hunt with the sticker seal that's super high grade. I mean, A++ seal grade on sticker seals, kind of funny.
It's a 9.6, right?
9.6 A++. Yep. Like, oh, okay, the sticker's perfect. Nice. Perfect. Sounds good. But still, I mean, that's an unbelievably rare piece. There's a bunch of early NES stuff that's rare. There were a few surprises, like that 9.8 CIB Zelda Link to the Past is at 8,500. Dude, that's crazy for a CIB. It just shows you. I mean, there's, you know, we've been talking about this for a couple of years, and other guys are starting to talk about it too. Like, high grade CIB is the amount of stuff that's out there is so limited that if you get more people coming in, dude, it's going to be impossible. And the more of these auctions that happen, the more of them that are ending up in close to permanent homes.
What's interesting is we talked about this too. The transition to CIB was not all, but largely due to sealed stuff was just pricing 95% of people out, right? So then they switched to CIB. Well, those are going up now. So now when average person gets priced out of that, then what's the next thing?
Yeah, right. Well, lower grade stuff, I guess. I mean, lower grade stuff. You know?
Yeah, I guess, but I think then you're going to.
But that's what the market needs. The market needs to have lower grade stuff rise in value, mid-range stuff go up.
I think you're going to also see strategy guides come up then, clean strategy guides, because those still tough to find, but those are still somewhat reasonably priced. But if you find, a 9.6, 9.8, CGC grades those things super tough, just like the Nintendo Power.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously that Nintendo Power 1, that's a 9.8. It's at 21,000 right now.
Did you see? I couldn't verify it, but I just saw a post. Someone says, "Does this look like a 9.8 to you?" And there was like blemishes on the magazine itself. Now, again, I didn't do any research and verify if it was the same exact one, but it looked. If that's true, it looked rough.
It's not rough, but it's certainly. I mean, it's like you see the same thing happening with like VGA or other companies. Like you have a lot of variances in different types of media over different, you know what I mean? So you don't know exactly how they're grading it compared to comic
CGC,
books.
You'd think, yeah, because they do also do comic books and magazines as well, that this wouldn't be that much of a different leap.
Yeah, that's true. You would think.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
Anyway, what do you got? Transition me.
Well, no, I mean, I think we should stay on the heritage topic. I mean, there's some, it's funny today. I was talking to somebody, longtime collector, well, at least, the last 4 or 5 years at least, and maybe earlier. And he was saying like, hey, he said, we were talking about selling stuff. And he's like, oh, your stuff never seems to move. And it's like, yeah, I don't really hardly ever sell anything, at least publicly. Most of my sales are private. I had a really big sale last year, Chrono Trigger, which was an absolutely immaculate copy. I know who I sold it to is extremely happy with the grade that it came back. It's one of the cleanest games I ever owned. So that's something I move. And I don't sell a lot of stuff. So, I just finished a deal this week on something super rare, private sale. But I don't move a lot of stuff, and certainly I don't move a lot of stuff publicly. People have to come to me and really blow me away with an offer to get me to move things. And I think the point of that is you're going to get to a point where all these heritage auctions are putting a lot of these pieces in permanent homes, especially now, because, maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, when there was a lot of speculators and stuff and people trying to flip and make money. That was one thing. But now, as the market is more normalized, you have stuff that's really being bought up by people that are actual collectors that want to hold this stuff. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. And yeah, now that the market has, I don't want to say tanked a little bit, but just for lack of a better term, tanked. Yeah, I agree with you. I was going to say the same thing, is that the people who are buying now really want it. And they're not speculators. They're not flippers for the most part. They're collectors. They want it in their collection. So even though times are tough financially for a lot of people, if they're still ponying up the dough to get it, it's probably going to stay in their collection.
Yeah. I mean, I think Mad Dog or somebody bought a bunch of bangers on that October auction when prices were relatively reasonably priced, I guess. I mean, you're talking about spending 30, 40, 50,000 still on a video game. It's a lot of money. But when a lot of those things were 6 figures plus, I mean, he's not going to move that stuff. And I know even stuff that I've bought at decent prices, I'm not going to move it unless it's going to, unless someone wants to reset the market.
Move it.
Police Academy.
Miss Hooks.
If unless someone wants to reset the market, right, and bring the market back to a new price point, then I'll be willing to move something. But yeah, I mean, that's where I think a lot of the next so many auctions are. The prices are going to slowly rise, and it's going to end up in permanent collection homes. So these are going to dwindle. These heritage auctions are going to dwindle as far as what's available over the next 2 to 5 years, where once that's all dried up, there's so few copies of this stuff compared to everything else, that if the market would ever expand to what it is with comic books and cards, as far as number of collectors, even if there were half as many, there's just none out there. So the CIB stuff goes up, even the mid-grade stuff goes up. And, that's a transition it into, is this going to be what?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Is this going to be the age of the video game movies? Like, so we've had saturated with.
That's what I was going to transition to. So we're on the same wavelength there. Yeah, dude. I think, like, this is going to be the age of video game movies. Mario is already, I believe I read, the biggest animated opening of all time.
Wow.
So how studios work. We were both in this industry. They see one thing work. They go, oh, good, dude, let's just stamp and repeat. Yep. So that is going to be the way. And that's exactly what happened with comic books, with all the stupid superhero movies. It astronomically rose all the values. And I think that's exactly what we're going to see with video games. So this is sort of the last real shot for people to get in, I think.
Yeah.
On premium stuff. Are you in agreement?
Yeah, I mean, I've been even recently. I was talking to a lot of people about this. You know, who you're talking about stuff that's less than 5 or 10 known copies in the world, no matter the grade, and a lot of them are now ending up at permanent homes. Like, who's gonna? How are you gonna? You know, the deal I was working on, a really rare item that I have. You know, and I kind of said, hey. You're not negotiating with me on an item that there's 5 others that you can go on eBay and bid on. It's a totally different negotiation process. Like, you can't just be like, oh, hey, well, this one's here. And, you know, how about try to make a deal? You really have to blow somebody's doors off, because it's like, you can't even find another one to bid on.
Yep.
Find one that anyone's willing to even listen to your offer at with a lot of this stuff. It's not one of one stuff, but it's pretty darn close. You know,
absolutely.
So, all right, Mario movie.
Yeah,
you go first on this one. I'll tell you, I'm glad you have a memory like a steel trap, because I got done with that movie and I loved it, and I loved a ton of stuff in it. And if I don't bring a notepad anymore, I don't even remember. Yeah.
You mean like this?
God, love that. Yes.
I'm the idiot in the movie theater with my little pen. Like,
who is this? Leonard Maltin?
Yeah.
Roger Ebert.
Well, what do you want to start with? Reviews? Do you want to start with cool little things? There's one point I'd like to make about the music as well. That one's going to take a little longer, so maybe we save that or hit it right away.
Well, I'll tell you, the things that stuck out for me right away. I mean, I had a smile ear to ear on watching that entire thing. I mean, it never stopped. It was so great. The things that stuck out to me that I don't need to remember specifics. I love that they.
Are we doing spoiler alert here?
Spoiler alert to anyone who somehow has
so we are
on our nerd podcast hasn't seen Mario yet. Yeah, sorry. I mean, how many spoilers are there really?
Worded emails.
Dude, I love that they used so many different Mario game references, right? All different ones. And then I love that that they use music from many different ones. Right, like, and even obscure stuff, like they use stuff from Super Mario Sunshine.
I saw every marquee, like main, not games that in which Mario appears, but every Mario game, I saw a reference, every single one somewhere in there.
I love that they were playing Kid Icarus at the beginning.
I knew you'd love that. I thought you were right in there.
I was like, yes.
There was one guy in my theater's like, yeah.
Well,
too, because I didn't say anything, but like, I could tell that my theater was like, so it was pretty cool for me. I went to Universal Studios here because, you know, I live right here, and saw it at actual Universal Studios.
Amazing.
So yeah, it was super cool. And, you know, the audience, they were kind of younger, which, all right. I mean, there were some old guys like us there, but it's weird. Like every sweet 80s reference, the young kids didn't even respond. Yeah. And then like every stupid classic, or not typical, like modern day joke, like like they loved it. Yeah. Anyway, but fuck, sorry, dude. What
well, no. So the overall, I love that they hit all the games. I love that they see, and this is the reason why notes don't work, as we learned last week. I told you, when we just wing it with no notes, it's the way to go. I always struggled before when I was podcasting with my friend to keep going back to my notes. It works better if we don't have notes, but then no one will remember anything that happened in this movie, because all I remember is the overall themes. I love that they hit a bunch of the movies. There was Rainbow Road. There was some shit from Smash Brothers. There was Super Mario Sunshine obscurities. Obviously, a bunch of Super Mario Kart references, or Mario Kart in general.
Punch Out? Did you get Punch Out?
And
tell me you noticed that, dude.
There was a Punch Out reference. I know, I remembered it. Yeah,
it was Punch Out Pizzeria, and there was like little Mac stuff.
Oh,
like green boxing.
Yeah.
It was so cool.
Yeah.
And then they had a Jumpman arcade game in there, which is what Mario was originally called, Jumpman.
Yeah.
Because there's no translation. There's a Space Invaders in there as well.
I missed the very beginning of the movie. You know, here's the other thing, dude.
What were you doing? Are you ever on time for anything?
There are 25 minutes of fucking previews, and I'm I go to the movies 20 minutes later now, no matter what. Now, sometimes they only put 10 or 15 minutes and then I get screwed. And I think for kids' movies, they feel bad for the parents that have to wrangle these kids up. And so they start them times earlier. You know what I mean?
There was, I'm not kidding, a half hour of trailers before mine. And
they were all, I'm always 20 minutes and there usually still has yet to start. Unlike in the 80s where it's like, there might have been one or two previews. And then, you know what I mean?
I mean, I got there. I just didn't know what the situation was going to be on opening night at Universal, where they just opened Super Mario World. So I didn't know if there was going to be like lines or whatever. So I definitely got there early. And I actually got the real ticket stub. So as dumb as this sounds, I think I'm going to send it into like PSA and have it slabbed. I think that'd be pretty cool. I mean, just to like,
it's like sending in modern Switch games to get graded, hoping you get a tempo and some idiot
Breath
pays
of Wild in 20
$5,000
years is going to be a banger. You know that.
I mean, there's just a lot of copies, but yeah, who knows? I mean,
but how many other tickets are there of opening night at Universal? I mean, it's going to have that.
I like that.
People scan their thing now; they don't get a physical ticket.
Well, yeah, it's like going to games. You get no tickets. The Indians don't even have the option to get tickets anymore. Like it's impossible. I'm like, what if I don't want to have a smartphone? What if I don't want to be tied to this thing like a you know?
What if I'm my dad?
What if I just want to have nothing?
Best Buy in 1998.
How do I get into the Indians game? It's like you can never get into another game ever again unless you join.
Well, that's my point. I actually have a physical media copy of now the biggest animated movie of all time. I don't ever think it's going to be, you know, $1,000 item or anything, but it's kind of cool to have.
But before we go into more about the movie, what did you love it or not? Overall,
I liked
let's start macro.
All right, I liked it. I loved all the 80s references. I thought the music was outstanding, and again, I do want to make a point on that separately. The
music was great, dude. There were 3 fucking 80s bangers, and I can't even remember what they are anymore. But there were 3 80s bangers.
Beastie Boys.
Yes, that's right. No Sleep Till Brooklyn. Oh my God, that was so great.
AC/DC.
Which one?
It was the AC/DC song. I can't remember which one it was now, though. Probably Thunderstruck or something.
Oh, yeah. That was, it was Thunderstruck. Yeah. And then there was that Hero song. I'm trying to remember.
Because it's in
Hero. Oh, yeah. It was in the Mario movie and the Tetris movie, which was wild.
Crazy.
It was like, it's like an slight Russian version of it, but I just thought it was wild.
A hero.
Yeah.
His name is Drago. I must break you.
Dude, that's so great.
If he dies, he dies.
We just rewrote it again. But not to switch to the Tetris one, but I thought that was so cool that there were a lot of Mario references and Nintendo references in Tetris the day after seeing Super Mario movie.
Yeah.
Dude, the whole week has just been fucking phenomenal for an 80s kid, bro. Has it not? Like, are you kidding me?
It has been. Like, and then some other like movie references, not even video game references, movie references I picked up in the Mario movie. I can't remember what they are, but in my notes, Ferris Bueller, T2. Oh, T2 is after the blue shell hits and it blows up, and then the Koopa comes walking out like T-1000. You can't tell me that wasn't an homage.
Yeah.
Breakfast Club I don't remember what that was.
I mean, I'm gonna buy the movie and watch it like 12 more times.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure I'll like it better. Hold on. You asked me if I loved it. I liked it. It to me, and maybe I should have seen this coming because I don't watch a lot of animated movies, but it felt like just a kid's movie. And I know, you know, Mario is a kid's thing, but at the same time,
at first they had to make it a kid's movie. It's like modern Star Wars. The studios have to pull in the kid money and the toy money and all that shit. But it was, I mean, they didn't make it too adult, which, okay, it would have been nice if they could have a little bit, but they hit so many, like even the blue shell, like it was obviously made by people who understood the Mario games and universe. Thank fucking God. Because not like these idiots who took over the Star Wars franchise, at least for the 3 trilogy movies, and had no fucking idea what Star Wars was really about. That was sickening and just disgustingly horrible. The 3 trash movies that they put out, just copying the formula on the first one, and then 2 nonsensical things. Like, dude, not to go back, but I know you're not a huge Star Wars guy. But you are a Spaceballs guy, and I will tell you that the entire second movie is them driving around the fucking universe, hoping that they don't run out of gas. I'm like, Am I watching Spaceballs again? Like, what am I watching right now?
Better.
I mean, than the second new Star Wars movie, 100%. Like,
Dude, hold on.
It never crossed my mind. No. I have to make this point. It never crossed my mind in 40 years of watching Star Wars that the ships or anything ran on some kind of gasoline. It's not gasoline, but like some power. Like, to me, it was always like, oh, the civilization is so advanced that there's a power source that's like just harnessed from the universe, almost like a micro atomic generator of some sort for all these things. Not like the Death Star. I mean, the like one of the big Corellian ships or something is pulling into the harbor to regas up with some energy crystals. The whole thing was so fucking stupid, dude. The whole movie I thought I was watching Spaceballs. So that you would appreciate that they instead of stealing something from Star Wars, they stole something from Spaceballs, which the Rian Johnson who did that and whoever all signed off on it, and then he does a phenomenal movie like Knives Out. What are we looking at here? Spaceballs. It's backwards.
Spaceballs the coaster.
Oh, okay.
God, if you watch the movie,
it's backwards.
Oh, I'm sorry. You made a 15-minute point just now that you didn't realize as a kid there wasn't gas in the future.
Yeah, like gasoline. Like that's what we're gonna write a movie about.
That's what I thought of it. It's the power of the Schwartz.
Before we go back to the Super Mario movie, somebody asked, "What is your favorite horror movie?"
Showgirls.
No, not what is the most horrible movie. What is your favorite horror movie? Do you have one? Can you pick one out? I mean, I love 80s horror and stuff. There's a great documentary that I follow on my Instagram. I'll give a shout out to them. It's called something The Darkness. Oh God, it helps if you can remember.
Yeah.
Look at my Instagram, friends. Something with The Darkness, and they cover all the 80s stuff. It's so great, dude. There's just it's its own whole thing. So I don't know if I would pick something out of that because it's hard to pull one out of that as a pure like scariest movie of all time. Is either the original Saw, Suspiria, either the old one or the new one. High Tension, a French film. That's probably the scariest movie I've ever seen. Honestly, that movie is so fucking disturbing, bro. High Tension, hot tension, they say in French. But I don't know. Those would be the scariest ones. What's my favorite one? I mean, because I'm so attached to the 80s, maybe I would pull something from there like Lost Boys or Nightmare 3 or, you know what I mean?
I can't say Lost Boys is a horror movie. I mean, if it is in that category, 100% Lost Boys, but I'm not going to put it there. So I'm going to go slasher for mine. I'm going to one called Blood Rage.
Well, that one I don't know.
Oh my God. I watched it on accident like 3 years ago. Outstanding. It's so good. It's the very rare Thanksgiving themed horror.
Is this you trying to be one of those like snooty, like my favorite is a movie you've never seen?
Did I flare my nostrils?
No, maybe in your mind.
No. But I mean, honestly, the first Nightmare, it's just, to me, it's iconic, important.
I just love the third one because the third one is so
it's got
80s.
Dokken.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just so 80s. Everything about it is so 80s, But it's tough to pick just one out of that whole grouping because any of the early stuff from any of those are so good. Original Halloween, original Friday the 13th, original Child's Play. I mean, even the original Hellraiser is fantastic, bro. That movie is so good.
Well, I got a little segue to bring us back to Mario.
Okay.
With the success of this movie, they're obviously going to do offshoots and just basically hoard out as much as they can. I get it.
Right.
Whatever.
Let's just hope they do it with everything video games and do it right. Like, can you redo Uncharted, please?
Well, because we've been talking about. I've been pitching you years now, writing video game movies, not anime. Actual.
Now's our time.
Now's our time. So I'm calling it now. Anyone does this, I'm coming after you. Paperboy. It's my movie.
Yeah. You did mention that over a year ago. And it's funny because we were talking about doing video game movies before any of these hit, or I didn't even know they were going to do them.
Not at all. BioShock hadn't been announced. Uncharted might have been
maybe announced. It was around that time when we were like, oh, Uncharted. But Uncharted, you could tell they were going to turn it into something that wasn't that video game related. And we were like,
and I feel like a million people have said Uncharted would be such a good movie. Like,
that's Indiana Jones.
Yeah,
of course.
But what I am excited to see is, and I'm predicting now they'll do it. They'll make a Luigi's Mansion movie and around a Halloween release some year.
So that was one. They had the little Luigi's Mansion segment at the beginning, right?
And I have it in my notes.
It came out of it pretty quickly, But I mean, there were so many things that they just dropped in for 5 minutes or 2 minutes or 30 seconds. And those, what was the third big song we were talking about? I don't think it was The Hero. I don't even know who does that song. Do you know?
Hero. It's an
80s song for sure. Yeah.
If I heard it, I would know it, who did it. But yeah, there's just so many cool little references. And I think the most important thing, what I really realized, that why we endear ourselves so much to those games and also how it worked in this movie is the music. That's the glue. That's the bridge, man. And I never realized that till I watched this. And do you know who Koji Kondo is?
Sounds really familiar.
This dude was finishing college in 1984 in Japan, and literally on the bulletin board in the lunchroom.
You keep telling the story, and you'll fill me in. I got to use the restroom. Keep going.
Yeah, no problem. So on the bulletin board, there's a thing from this company called Nintendo, and they're looking for music composers, sound designers, sound programmers, all this kind of stuff. So he applies, sends his his little transcript in, all this kind of stuff. Somehow they never asked him for a demo tape or anything, and he got hired. And his advisor, well, I kind of spoiled he got hired, but his advisor basically said, well, I know this is a dream job for you. It'd be cool and everything. You like video games, but you should really apply to more places. But he just felt it and he trusted it in the moment.
Note to self.
What?
Don't drink 3 tennis ball glasses worth of
no, that's not a tennis water.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so this dude, 1984, I'm going to recap for you. He's in Japan. He's about to graduate college. He sees a little thing on the bulletin board, Nintendo. They're looking for sound programmers, sound engineers, all this kind of stuff.
I think this guy was in the Netflix series. I think they talked about him. Maybe. I don't know.
Anyway, he got hired. It's the only job he's ever had. He still works there to this day. His first assignment he did for music was Punch-Out, the arcade game. And they're like, oh, we like what you did there. You know what? We got a new platform coming up called the Nintendo Entertainment System, and we have a marquee game called Mario. Maybe you can tinker with that.
Mm-hmm.
Original Mario score, him. What does he do after that? Mario 2, Mario 3, Super Mario World, Link to the Past, both Zeldas before that.
Holy man.
Dude, this guy, there should be a movie about him.
There's a lot to cover there because, first of all, it brings me to another thing I was talking about with fellow collector today. You and I are knee deep in the hoopla here of music, sealed music, media stuff, collectibles. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, I am having so much fun. I mean, of course, I played guitar and I had my buddies and I had a band and I liked all different kinds of music. So I have a big range of things. And I love to sing. Obviously, you've been put through that misery. But, dude, I get these tapes in the mail and I just start singing a few of the songs to myself as I'm opening them, like, and all excited. And then the other thing we were talking about is, dude, you consumed music. Like you're talking about with the Super Mario movie. You consumed music throughout your entire childhood, teenage years, 20s, and not just like video games were a respite for me, like what stress of life. You go, you sit down for a couple hours, you do something with your friends when you were younger. But it was in this, like almost like it's like a cave. Right. And it was usually something to escape. Whereas music is part of so many memories of your life out in the world, doing things in the car, headphones. I mean, music is part of so many memories, good and bad, high and low emotions, not just one specific type of nostalgia that we get sitting in front of a movie for 2 hours or going to a theater in 1988 for 2 hours. Music is part of there's so many memories that come back to me when I open these.
Music is the greatest yearbook of your life.
Yes.
Honestly, when I go back and try and remember something, like what year was there? Where was I? Then I think what music I was listening to, or the other way around. If I hear the music, it takes me back right to that year or whatever. I'm like, oh yeah. I was on unemployment.
Oh, dude, that reminds me of one that I just got in today. Like this is so hard to find. The cassette is not. But this is how I own this album. This is Tupac, All Eyes on Me. I think this was 95. Yeah, 95, 96. Mm-hmm. The CD version of this is so difficult to find, and this thing is dead mint. I'm so happy. And, there's a couple songs on here that, it's funny because, both of us were into 80s glam metal and hair bands and whatever. And then I loved the grunge scene in some ways for it musically, but I couldn't get behind the feelings. It was so different than the 80s. So there was a period where like a lot of my friends got into Nirvana and Pearl Jam and this. It came off as kind of whiny, complaining music about all kinds. So I was like, fuck it. I'll get into rap, you know, because we were kind of into rap in the late 80s with Eazy-E and NWA and stuff. So, you know, I got super into rap. So in 1995, I'm still listening to GNR, hair bands, and, you know, Biggie and Tupac and Easy and whatever, right? Ice Cube. Mm-hmm. And like that album, man, on CD, 1995, 96, Spring Break, Panama City, Florida. I think those are the only 2 CDs we put in the car on the drive down there. We had a van of like 6 dudes. That, like California Love, dude, that song bumped at every bar on Spring Break in 96, like you wouldn't believe. And there's just so many, like the best song on there is probably one of his best songs ever. Shorty gonna be, Shorty gonna be a thug. Dude, that song is so good. And it just takes me back to so many memories out being in the world, doing shit with my friends at that time. Not like just at home watching a movie. Dude, I just feel like this music shit is gonna go crazy when people really get a hold of it, dude.
Let me finish up one little thing. In addition to that, it's like, now you might argue this, but would Star Wars or Indiana Jones have been as big as they are without the scores, without John Williams? I don't think so. I don't think they'd be as iconic. No. And this is what I'm saying about Koji Kondo. He is the John Williams of video game music.
I like that.
Let me give you a run here. Let me give you this guy. This is just one 10-year run roughly of his career. You ready?
Yeah.
First Mario Brothers, Zelda, Mario 2, Mario 3, Super Mario World, Pilot Wings, Link to the Past, Star Fox, Yoshi's Island, Mario 64, Star Fox 64, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask.
So many great songs from Ocarina of Time.
Can you imagine that kind of run? That's like a Tom Brady type of run. Like, that's just unbelievable. And since then, I'll go through them real quick. Sunshine, Wind Waker, Four Swords Adventures, New Super Mario Brothers, Twilight Princess, Mario Galaxy, Smash Brothers, Mario Galaxy 2, Zelda Skyward Sword, Mario 3D, Mario Maker, Zelda Twilight Princess HD, Odyssey, and Smash Brothers Ultimate. And
I wonder how that, dude. I wonder if you know how in music you're paid royalties on usage and stuff, and downloads now and everything else. I wonder if this dude makes money on that in the same format. Can you imagine how much money he's made?
Dude, I hope
if he's
so.
getting paid like they do in soundtracks or music.
Well, think about like the early 2000s. You know how many people downloaded Mario Brothers for like a ringtone?
Yeah.
I hope Koji's getting a penny or a whatever the hell they call it.
A yen?
Like a Yoshi coin each time.
A Yoshi coin, yeah.
Did you see that in the Mario movie?
Which?
It was in the back shop of like, there was like Mario and Toad, before he met the princess, are walking through the Mushroom Kingdom. In the background, there's like an antique store, vintage store. And like one of the things was the like 2D pixel Yoshi coin.
Dude, I wonder if it's going to be like the Big Lebowski movie where we can watch it 40 times and we'll find something new. And that goes back to my other point. I love that whoever worked on these films, you could tell had a love for the Mario universe, you know?
Yeah.
And you saw recently, I posted on my Graded 80s Kid page, 3 9.2 CIB copies of the first 3 games, excluding Mario Arcade because that's not a Super Mario game. If you had to pick one, which one is it? And dude, to me, the parallels between the Mario games and the Star Wars original trilogy are mind-boggling in similarity to me personally.
Which would I pick as a collector item, or which game do I like? What are you asking?
Which is the best game of the 3? Because I know both of us agree that Super Mario World is the greatest Super Mario game of all time.
Mm-hmm.
But if you had to
as
pick
a kid,
one
I
of those
really only played the first one mainly as a kid because, 3 and Super Mario World were kind of back to back, and we just got the Super Nintendo, so we didn't.
Yeah, I think it was 2 years different. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're Wisconsin, so we're 2 to 5 years behind everybody.
Right.
So to us, they both came out in like 1994, but. My heart is with the first one, but as far as actual,
in '94, I was drinking beers and banging chicks, bro. Come on, you were just starting to play Mario.
We just heard a Super Nintendo. We had a Nintendo, a first one. Also, pet peeve tangent. I can't stand when you watch like TikTok videos or any of these kids now. They call it a NES or a SNES. It drives me up a wall. Nobody who were alive back then said NES or SNES.
NES or SNES or
SNES. Super Nintendo or
yes, SNES. Really, it was Super Nintendo, not SNES.
Yep.
Yeah, that's so true, dude. If I had to pick one, it kind of goes in the parallels of, and even the Indiana Jones trilogy is kind of the same. Return of the Jedi, Last Crusade, and Mario 3 are all like the big studio productions. They're well done. They're beautiful. They're intricate. They're awesome. Mario 1, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Star Wars Original are just real. They're just raw and real and beautiful in their own way. There's not too many bells and whistles, but they're just like fucking perfection.
Yeah, Mario 1 has 0 bells or whistles.
Whistles, yeah. And then Mario 2 and Temple of Doom, I think maybe the Temple of Doom is the one that's a little least like that, but certainly Empire Strikes Back and Mario 2 to me are so similar in the fact that they're much more for adults. They're much more adult themed. They take way more risks than any of the other 2 movies.
Okay. Do you think they'll do that with the Mario movies now? Do you think the second one's now that they got the kid one out of the way?
I mean, I could see them. I feel like since Star Wars created that flow of movie feeling or risk or whatever, that there's a lot of other things that have come along since then and kind of replicated that flow. So, the second movie is where you take the chances and whatever, because if it doesn't go exactly as planned, or maybe the audience doesn't exactly love it, they will 30 years later, or you can make up for it by blowing the doors off the third one. Right. And making it just everything that the audience wants it to be. Because that's in essence what Mario 3 is. That's in essence what Return of the Jedi is. It's everything that the audience wanted and clamored for.
Yeah. And as weird as my instinct of this one too, is that I wish it was a little more adult themed. So I am hoping, I don't need it to be rated R. It shouldn't be. It's a Mario game. It should be light and silly, but I thought
dude, I just had so many things that I wanted to say there that I didn't.
What did I say?
No, just I just wanted it to be more adult themed. I'm thinking Bowser with like a threesome with.
They want to see the wedding night. Yeah, I didn't like the Bowser in love with Peach thing, to be honest. I thought the story and plot was pretty non-existent, and I get it's a kids movie, but I thought they could have somehow made it more like Mario game structure in that.
Well, I just love how I like the whole beginning where Mario's living in New York and he's got
fine.
this thing and all that stuff.
Bowser. Bowser should be scary and evil and bad, and they turned him into just a light-hearted wienery dude who was in love with a chick that was out of his league.
Yeah, but if you play a lot, if you play Paper Mario or some of the Paper Mario games or some of the other ones where there's a little bit more RPG aspects, dude, there's some really funny Bowser stuff that he kind of fits that character in a lot of those where of course Bowser's left up to the imagination in a lot of the early NES and Super Nintendo games and stuff about what his character would be like and how he would, but he has a lot of that kind of quirky, silly patheticness to him in some of the RPG games.
Fair. I haven't spent time on those, so fair. Then I'm in the wrong, I guess, or certainly not in the knowledge.
But it's fair to say, that's how you would have thought of him being as a kid, because that's how we all probably would have. But Nintendo did explore some of those other layers of his character in some of the RPG games and such, So.
Jack Black crushed it as Bowser. Crushed it. He would. I did think some of the other voice acting was kind of weak, though. I thought Charlie Day did great as Luigi, and none of them bothered me. I'm not going to say anybody did a bad job. I just think they could have used a little more direction. They were just kind of there.
I thought everything about it for what it needed to be was great. I'm glad, you and I both said, there wasn't a bunch of modern woke nonsense. I mean, I think they made Peach a little stronger than she would have.
That was one thing that bothered me too. All of a sudden, she's the best at
and everything. That's such a boring trope. It's such a let's give the young girls of today a strong womanly character. Dude, that's not how she fit into most of those games.
That bothered me a ton. That's in my notes.
Yeah, but that's obviously from just modern woke culture.
Yeah, and it wasn't over the top. It wasn't terrible.
No, it wasn't.
It was still okay.
Unpalpable but it wasn't great. That part of it, that was the only thing about it.
One thing the movie absolutely got wrong. I'll tell you two things, and they're related. You know when they get the star at the end?
Yes.
Yeah, you get the star for like 12 seconds in real life, not 5 minutes. And they got the star with Bowser. You never get a star against Bowser.
Yeah.
Never. So that bothered me, but it's just a little.
Well, they had to create that from the beginning. That was the beginning part that I missed. I walked in right when he was like, "I have the star power."
Mm-hmm.
Somehow he got it. I mean, trust me, I'm going to watch it a few more times. But let's transition that then into a couple of these other amazing movies. And we still both. I haven't seen the Nike Air movie yet, but obviously I have to see that. It's not a must theater movie. I don't think. You know,
well, it is for me because.
Oh yeah.
I love those Nike Jordan ones. They're classic. They looked good then. They look good now. So it is a big deal to me.
I just mean from like a visual standpoint. Like, of course, the Mario, the big cartoon. Oh, yeah. Obviously, the other one I was going to touch on. I know you don't have a lot of knowledge of it, but I went and see the Dungeons and Dragons movie. That's a big fantasy adventure you need to see on a big screen. Like, I'm going to try to see the Nike movie next week. But if I see it at home, all the same. It'll be great.
Yeah, from that standpoint, I agree with you. It's just I was trying to see when it's going to be streaming, and apparently not for like another 2 or 3 months.
Oh yeah, then we'll.
So I don't really want to wait that long. Like, yeah, but it's not like I got to see that in the theater, man.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's transition to Tetris. How's that sound?
Let's.
What it was crazy how we both saw Mario, lighthearted, funny, silly kids, and then I didn't watch a trailer. I had zero knowledge going into Tetris.
Yeah, I didn't want them to get spoiled by anything either.
That was completely different in vibe and feel. Well, I really liked it. It's a better movie than Mario, certainly.
It's a fantastic movie. Now, it's funny because I've seen it now 4 times because I watched it the first night by myself. Well, with Maddie for 40 minutes. Then she falls asleep. And then every time we tried to finish it for her subsequently after that, she fell asleep 2 more times. So I did get to see the majority of it. So I have a lot more knowledge of that movie. And I'll tell you, that movie really hit home for me because one of my great adventures in life was going to Russia in 2000, 2001, which was only, I mean, it's people are like, oh, that's 10 years of the fall of communism. Dude, I'm going to tell you, not a lot had changed in Russia from 1990 to 2000. Okay. It is a very, very slow moving process. Certainly a big contrast from what it was under communist rule, but it's not like it is today. And it's funny, too, that I think about that movie brought back so many memories of my time spent in Moscow for a couple weeks. I went there and visited a friend of my mother's who had a very traditional Russian family, 3 daughters. The father was longtime military. She was a school teacher. They still lived in like communist apartment housing like you see in the movie. And I really got that experience. I'll tell you one thing. The one daughter's boyfriend drove me around and showed me around town for 2 weeks. And one thing that really hit home with the movie and him drive me around, I would drive around and you would see shit that you're like, that would never happen in America or pretty much anywhere else. And he would look at me, he'd go, "This is Russia." And it's like in that movie, like, this is how it works, bro. Like, what do you mean? This is exactly how it works. Like, you're out of your house. You're into this other shitty house, 1-bedroom house. See you later. You know, this is Russia. This is just how things work. And the Tetris movie brought back so many memories of being there and hearing their stories about how things were and the timing. I mean, so, you know, obviously the story becomes so intertwined and intricate with all these different companies and stuff trying to vie for the handheld rights. I had to explain it to Maddie a few different times because it was a bit confusing. But you know, there's so many different things that happen in that movie that if you don't follow it closely, but I love the fact that when I looked at a lot of the memorabilia of stuff that I have Tetris wise, it all lines up and matches up, you know, with that story.
I thought they did a great job making a modern style drama with, like, they did cool with the little 8-bit transitions and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, with the games when it would
that was really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, the great scene with the final countdown That was so good.
Dude, I have never been more stoked for that song in my entire life.
Same.
Bro.
I was on the couch by myself.
And you know how much I love that song and that album. I mean, I got outbid on the long box. The only long box I've ever seen on eBay about 2 months ago. I bid like $500. I couldn't believe this was before anybody was buying much of anything recently. Dude, that long box is so badass. That album is so badass. And that movie just took that song to a whole nother level, because I've been in Russia in a situation like that where I'm like, yes, dude. I mean, you see all these old videos of like early 90s when they opened up Russia to concerts and shit, and there's just 250,000 people.
Metallica, Pantera, that show.
Yeah.
1990. Yeah. Unbelievably iconic.
Yeah. And it's funny to me because that's what I was telling her. She's like, as I was explaining the story, dude, if that fucking big shot British fucking douchebag dad with the empty pockets doesn't blow the money problem at that exact time, he gets it. You know, he gets that deal. Like he keeps that deal away from, we kept him calling him Eddie the Eagle, but you know, he keeps that deal away from those guys. I mean, I love that there were Mario references. There were so many computer references. You know, it did remind me, I know I'm a little bit older than you, of like the Wild West of early computer games, where it was like, you would get something on a floppy drive, a 5 1/4 or whatever it was, the big ones, and you put it in your computer at school or at home once we got computers around. I'm trying to think, the earliest time I remember having like a home PC was probably like, the neighbor had an Apple Macintosh in the mid 80s, early to like 84 maybe. But we didn't have a PC at home until maybe like 89.
Yeah, but there were computers in Wisconsin in 1998. We came across the border.
Yeah. Well, around 89, and there would be like these bootleg games that you would play. And I remember in like mid 80s being at school and playing some of those, like literally the MS-DOS, and then what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? You know, and then and then you type something in and you would go somewhere else. I mean, I remember being in about 7th grade, which would have been around 88, 89 maybe, and we had a computer programming class for MS-DOS and stuff. So there was a lot of that cool things where these guys were writing programs like that with cursors and, you know, adjusting and modifying text and other things to make games out of it. I remember those times. I mean, I was young enough that I don't remember them specifically as far as like being a computer engineer or something, but I remember playing stuff like that and just being like, wow, that was the beginning of all of those video game things, you know? Because I think the first home video game that I ever played, I can't remember if we had the Texas Instrument TI-99 before or after. I think we actually had it before. The neighbor had the Apple Mac, which would have put that, but maybe not. If not, the first game I played was probably Munchman or Moon Patrol or something. And if not, if it was the first game I ever played was on the computer, which I think that might actually be right. The first game I would have played would have been Lode Runner with the real primitive graphics, you know, where you controlled things with the keyboard and the space bar and stuff. And the guys, and then he would move around.
You reminded me of Gilbert in Revenge of the Nerds, the computer class, where you don't have to be afraid of computers. Computers are your friends.
Yeah.
Well, and then he picks that broad up.
I'll tell you a great story. There was a girl in our high school, and computers were still not a very well-known thing then, talking about maybe like 94, 95. I mean, we had gotten used to how to use them and to write papers, mostly just word processing, things of that nature. It wasn't like it is now, where like you still went to the library and looked up shit in the card catalog, you know, and went through the traditional channels. But I remember she came in and she was hot. She was a little ditzy, but we were all working on something, and she looked over and she was like, "How do I write a paper on this thing?" And we were like, "You see that?" And it was the speaker, like the volume out. We're like, "Oh, you just tell it into that speaker." And she goes, "I want to write a paper." And we all died laughing, right? And now the funny part is, fast forward 30 years later, 25 years later, that's exactly how, that's how it works. I mean, that is how it works. Siri, I want to write a paper, you know.
Crazy. So she was onto something.
Yeah, she knew before we did. I want to show you something really cool, and we could talk through it. I was looking at this after watching it for the 3rd time with Maddie. So here's my copy of Tetris. So if you remember at the beginning of the movie, you know, they bamboozle all these guys into thinking they have these rights that they don't have, and they sell it off and whatever. Well, this is 1988. So this would have been pre-Game Boy, 89 release. 89, 90 is when everyone started getting Game Boy. So this is the Tetris that in essence was stolen when they didn't have console rights, or they manipulated the wording of the contract to say that they did.
They said it was a computer, not a console.
Yeah, computer. Yeah. So this would have been the computer version that was meant to be on Nintendo, and it's an unlicensed game. It wasn't licensed through Nintendo either. But I love reading the trademarks. Trademark 1987, Academy Soft Elorg. Elorg was the Russian agency. Yep. All rights reserved. Tetris licensed to Andromeda Software. And sub-licensed to Mirrorsoft Limited. So Andromeda Software is Stein's company, and Mirrorsoft is the two British fucking douchebags.
Yeah.
So this is it. This is it, bro. This is literally. I love these pieces even more, and I love the first one because obviously I've been to St. Basil's Cathedral in Red Square, which is, this is the other thing too, dude. We're back to the Cold War. I mean, I was telling Maddie, you didn't understand what it was like in 1985. The Cold War was on everyone's mind at all times, that we're going to go to nuclear holocaust and we're all going to be gone. And it's just going to be this thing that doesn't exist anymore. But we're back to the place where, like, I mean, would you go to Russia now?
No, I don't have a passport.
I like Russian people. I had an amazing time there, but like, you can't just go there again and do what I did 20 years ago, So that was like a chance to see some of these things in this game, bro. I love.
To me, that version should shoot up in value because of the movie, and now more people know the true history of it with the licensing and the trademarks and stuff. And here's another thing I loved about the movie: it brought back that '80s Cold War America versus Russia type of thing. Like, it felt like an '80s movie. They did such a good, and it was subtle. It wasn't knocking you over the head with it, but it kind of actually propped capitalism up for once, which you don't see ever in any form of media anymore, and knocked communism down, which you certainly never see.
Yeah, well, certainly. Going to the
Show
second
me that Game Boy one.
Look at that. So here's the Game Boy one that everyone knows, right?
Yep.
Of course.
That's the hitter.
And this is the big hitter. This is one that the whole battle in the movie is over. And so here, read the trademark here. This official seal is your assurance that Nintendo blah, blah, blah. Trademark 1987, still 87, okay? Electrotechnica Elorg, okay? So still Elorg. Licensed to Bulletproof Software. That's his company in Tokyo.
Yep.
And sub-licensed to Nintendo. Dude, it's the two games are the whole story of the movie. You know what I mean? It's so cool.
Yeah, those are cool little historical pieces now that we know more about it. And like, I was telling my dad, he's like, "What'd you do today?" I said, "Oh, I watched a Tetris movie." I don't know what that is. What's Tetris, Dad? The video game? He's like, "Yeah, I don't play video games." I'm like, "Dad."
I mean, I've said this. You've heard me say this. Go ahead.
Dad, you've never heard of Tetris. Even if you don't play video games, you've never seen it on a cell phone, on a calculator. Like, over the last 35 years, it's arguably the biggest video game ever. Legitly.
Thomas, I'm like, Dad, I can write boobies with a calculator.
He can't do that.
Oh, he can't do that either. Okay.
Oh my God, he's calling right now.
He's listening to our podcast live on YouTube. He's like, "You better not sell me out, Thomas."
Okay, you're making me look bad now, and we're family. Okay, we family doesn't do that. So I'm like, "Dad, you know what Tetris is?" "No, I don't." I'm like, "Dad, in 1989, what did you get me for Christmas?" "Oh, hell, I don't know, Tom. Jesus, a bike, a coat, I don't know, football." I'm like, "No, Dad, you bought me the Game Boy with Tetris in it."
Wow. See, I didn't even have one.
Oh, I remember now. Sure, yeah, you had a little thing. You always needed batteries.
Yes.
That's, you remember Tetris now.
I love how the Nintendo guys were like, "Oh, we were going to give it a color screen, but then you need 12 batteries or something. Forget it."
Can you imagine that?
But
that finally got me rechargeable batteries.
The Game Boy is so hard to see the screen to this day. Like, you got to be out in the sunlight looking at it. It's so difficult. There's some companies made redone ones with the backlighting on the screen, but let's talk about Game Boy. I didn't have one. It was kind of one of those things where a lot of families were like exhausted by all the money that was being spent on NES for the couple years leading up to that. And then of course, some, like my mother was like, "I don't want you playing that everywhere you go." So that was so whoever the cool kids at school were had that thing and passed around Super Mario Land and Tetris. Dude, I still think to this day, Super Mario and Tetris might be the two most important games in video game history, honestly, because Tetris led to handheld games, the puzzle games. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there was a few puzzle games before that too, but I mean, Tetris just took over the world. I mean, it's still fun to play to this day, and it's the
so
genius is the simplicity, and it's still hard.
Yeah,
outstanding. Yeah, I would 100% agree. I mean, if you're doing Mount Rushmore of video game importance, Mario, Zelda, in no order, by the way, Tetris, and then what would the fourth be? Maybe.
I mean, most people would say Sonic, but I don't think it is.
No, Sonic, no, absolutely not. And that the weird kids said Sonic, but I just don't think Sonic's important. What did it bring to the world? What did it change?
Okay, so I totally agree with all three of those, right? Tetris, Zelda, Super Mario. What's the fourth one? I mean, that would be let's save that for another pot. Let's think about it for a while, and we'll make that into another because we're running out of time. Let's save it for another.
I'm going to give two maybes just off the top of my head. Madden or Gran Turismo?
Yeah, I was thinking Madden, but then I was thinking going back even earlier than that. Like, I mean, no, I know that it's solved really. The other one is Miss Pac-Man or Pac-Man is probably.
As far as iconic and big, yeah.
Important,
yes. But did it really inspire anything afterwards?
Oh, dude, the arcade versions of Pac-Man, huge, bro. Yes.
I know they were huge. What I'm saying is what games formed out of that genesis from Pac-Man? Besides, Snake or Senate, besides other things of that era, what is it continuing to inspire today? Nothing.
Yeah. Well, I hate to put it all in the Mario universe, but maybe Mario Kart.
If you're going strict racing game, I think Gran Turismo's had a bigger impact because Gran Turismo was the first game that really was tried to be a simulation.
I don't know. There's so many that could be in that next tier. You could take,
Resident Evil. You could argue maybe
open world, Resident Evil, Grand Theft Auto, Halo. No, Halo really brought the first person shooter. I mean, you could say something like Doom or Wolfenstein.
You almost have to do
the tier after those three is so open for discussion.
Yeah. You almost have to do it by eras. You almost have to do a Rushmore for 80s, 90s, 2000s.
No, I mean, I think we should do an entire thing. We'll bring on a couple other video game geeks and we'll talk. Look, it's set. It's Super Mario, Zelda, and Tetris. Bang. That's done. What's the fourth one? Yes, of course. Those three are there. There's no arguing.
What's up, man? Sorry, we got a message from one of my old coworkers. Hope you're doing all right, man. Legend of Zelda, absolutely, that's up there. Sorry, Jay, what were you saying?
Those are the three, and what the last thing would be the fourth one. What is that?
I just feel like we're missing an obvious one somehow.
Well, I thought of Pac-Man. I thought that would be one, but I understand that it didn't inspire a lot, but it certainly inspired a lot of people to go to the arcade afterwards and create other things.
Someone said Donkey Kong.
We'll save that for another time. I don't think it's Donkey Kong either. I think there's one that we'll maybe be able to say. I like the idea of Madden, but I'm like, well, Tecmo Bowl, okay, that did, but Madden led to a lot of other things. So it could be Madden.
To be fair, Madden just led to Madden. It didn't.
Well, it led to a lot of sports franchises, in my opinion.
Yeah, it just didn't reinvent the wheel. But yeah, Street Fighter I could see, or Mortal Kombat I did think of.
There's no for sure's though. The other three are for sure. Like it's no doubt.
Locks. Yeah.
Locks, bro. Locks. Those are absolute locks. And then the fourth one is all right. So let's hit this last movie before we wrap the show up. It's getting long.
What movie?
Dungeons and Dragons. Now, I know you didn't play Dungeons and Dragons, and I didn't play it much either. I'll be honest with you, it was something that was really cool, and the artwork was amazing. It's very complicated. There was a couple kids up my street in the mid-'80s that were super dorky that I tried to go play with them a few times because they had the capacity in their brains to do all that and put all the work in. The movie, I watched a little bit of the trailer, and I thought, boy, this doesn't seem how I would imagine Dungeons and Dragons to be. Okay? I would have imagined darker, scarier, whatever. And it's more like a lighthearted fantasy comedy with a few.
Was it PG-13?
PG-13, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
But I'll say this, dude, by the time you have to get over the first 10 or 15 minutes and allow it to flow. I think if you don't have any connection to Dungeons and Dragons or what you thought Dungeons and Dragons should be in a movie form, dude, it's fucking great. Like, the characters are fantastic. They're funny. It's an enjoyable movie. It's got a good story. There's a few things that aren't great about it, but dude, Hugh Grant is so good.
Oh, like Hugh's in it, huh?
Yeah. Oh, dude, and Chris Pine and Michelle Williams, or isn't that her? Not Michelle Williams. Who's the girl from Fast and the Furious?
Michelle Rodriguez.
Michelle Rodriguez, yeah. And oh, dude, it. Once I got done with it, I was like, you know what? Because what was Dungeons and Dragons? It was about the dungeon master and what he would create, the guy who ran the show of the game. A lot of it would depend on how he told the story, on how he did. So if you had the right guy telling the story, I think you could have many different versions of a Dungeons and Dragons movie. This one would be somebody I could see how the characters and they implemented certain aspects of things that you remember from Dungeons and Dragons, different places, different worlds. That part of it was great. I mean, I understand now why it's a 90 plus on Rotten Tomatoes for audience and for critic reviews. Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. And if you don't have a connection to Dungeons and Dragons, you should go see it because it was.
I'm not going to go see it, but I'll watch it.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry, buddy.
Oh, you mean you'll watch it at home?
Yeah. I'll watch it for sure. I'm just not going to go spend
$28 at the theater there. Yeah.
Correct. I already did that for Mario. I'm on a budget, man.
Yeah. Well, I think we have a very good topic. First, bring on a couple of big video game guys and hit that. I thought the movies. I mean, what a absolute magical couple weeks between Super Mario, Tetris, Dungeons and Dragons, Nike, Jordan, obviously all that. I think Jordan isn't actually even in it. Not him personally, but even an actor playing him. But that's fine. And then there's a few others that are coming out. The next movie of The Evil Dead is coming out, which should be fantastic. It looks scarier than hell.
It does, which weird. Like it looks like its own thing and not part of the series, but
right. But it still looks scarier than hell. And there's a couple other ones that are 80s themed. Let's just hope, like we said, that this kicks off a video game revolution.
Well, yeah, because I need more writing money quickly.
Comic book movies have to die soon. To me, they're going to be in 20, 30 years, they're going to be like Westerns of the 60s. Like,
yeah, just overdone.
Nobody gives a shit anymore.
People are going to be telling their, well, we used to watch Paladin, and that was a big deal, Tom. Sorry, I'm going to another dad's story. Everyone tuned in. Yeah, Dad, there's 3 channels. You had no choice.
Brand.
I get it. And then MASH came out. Yeah. And that is the most watched final episode of all time. People were talking about it.
It took me until about 15 years ago to realize that show took place in the Korean War, not the Vietnam War.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I assumed Vietnam as well.
Yeah.
I swear, in the beginning, they have like a Vietnam era helicopter.
Yeah. When somebody told me it was Korea, I'm like, wait, what?
What?
Yeah. Nobody talks about Korea. What are you talking about? Yeah, there's nothing about Korea. All right. Well, hey, it was great, man. I'm glad we got to see those. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you all enjoyed the movies. If you haven't seen them, please do. You will really enjoy them. They all, for the most part, got 95 or higher audience scores. So I think there's a lot of fun to be had there. Enjoy the pod, and we'll see you in a week or two. Peace.